Hello and welcome back, guys. We're now starting a part 2 of Izuku Midoriya the Storm Heir, written by Autumn Berry. You can find author's profile link in the description. Let's begin. 11. The murmurs of discontent had faded, and the remaining 50,000 students stood in tense silence, waiting for the next trial. The instructor, standing in mid-air with a calm yet imposing presence, surveyed the crowd before speaking. You have passed the first trial, but that was nothing compared to what awaits you next. His words sent a chill down the spines of many. The first trial had already eliminated hundreds of thousands, and now they were expected to endure something even worse. The second trial, he continued, is called the 7-day ordeal. A wave of whispers and murmurs spread across the students. 7 days. That sounded like an entire survival challenge rather than a simple test. The instructor smirked. He could already see the uncertainty creeping into the eyes of many. This trial is designed to test not just your combat skills, but your intelligence, endurance, adaptability, and resilience. For the next 7 days, you will be sent to a massive, isolated territory filled with deadly creatures, hazardous terrain, and unpredictable weather conditions. Your task is simple: survive and reach the designated checkpoint. Many students stiffened. A survival-based test. That meant limited resources and constant danger. But the instructor wasn't finished. However, simply surviving isn't enough. There are multiple conditions that you must meet to pass. The murmurs stopped, everyone listening intently. Condition 1. You must reach the final checkpoint by the end of the 7th day. If you don't, you fail. A basic requirement, but it meant they couldn't simply hide and wait for the test to end. Condition 2. The environment is constantly changing. The land is divided into 5 zones, and each zone has its own unique challenges. Every 2 days, the zones will shift, increasing the difficulty level. You must be prepared for everything. That meant even if someone found a safe place, it wouldn't last for long. Condition 3, you will be given only 1 ration pack at the start. If you want food, water, or shelter, you must find it yourself. Now, the students were visibly worried. 1 ration pack for 7 days. That was nowhere near enough. Condition 4, you will be marked with a tracking seal that will prevent you from leaving the test area. If you attempt to escape or cheat in any way, you will be immediately disqualified. That removed the possibility of trying to wait outside the designated zones. Then, the instructor's smirk widened. And the final condition: only 1,000 of you will pass. Even if you all survive, if you do not rank among the top 1,000, you will still fail. The entire field went silent. 50,000 students. Only 1,000 would pass. That meant they weren't just fighting against the environment, they were fighting against each other. One last thing, the instructor added. You are free to fight each other, but there is one rule: no lethal force. If you are caught killing another examinee, you will be immediately executed by the Nova Imperial Enforcement Guards. Now, the tension was palpable. Fights were allowed. Stealing supplies was allowed. Traps, ambushes, deception, all allowed. But murder was not. The students had barely processed all of this when the ground beneath them began to glow. The trial begins now. Before anyone could react, the ground disappeared beneath their feet. The ordeal begins in an instant. 50,000 students were teleported into different locations within the trial zone. Izuku landed HRD on rocky terrain, rolling as he quickly got to his feet. The sky above him was a raging storm, and the air was thick with humidity. He was alone. No sign of anyone else. He took a deep breath and focused. This is a test of survival. Then he heard it. A deep, rumbling growl behind him. Turning slowly, he saw a colossal beast towering over him. It had 6 legs, red glowing eyes, and a jaw filled with serrated teeth. Izuku's heart pounded, but he didn't panic. He clenched his fists, and the air around him crackled with electricity. The storm inside him was ready. And the ordeal had just begun. Izuku stood his ground, staring at the colossal beast before him. It towered over him, its 6 powerful legs digging into the cracked earth. Its red, glowing eyes locked onto him, and its jaw filled with serrated teeth opened, releasing a deep, bone-rattling growl. A wave of pure killing intent washed over Izuku, making his breath hitch for a moment. But he quickly shook off his fear. This isn't the first time I've fought against something stronger than me. I just have to find a way to win. The storm within him raged, the wild, dragon-like power roaring to life. Electricity crackled around his body, wind howled, and his muscles tensed as he prepared for battle. Then, the beast charged. A fight against death. It was fast. Way too fast for something its size. Izuku barely had time to react before it was on him, one of its massive claws swiping at him with brutal force. Boom! Izuku leaped back just in time, but the sheer impact of the attack shattered the ground where he had stood. His heart pounded. If that had hit me, I would have been torn apart. The beast let out a piercing roar, then lunged forward again. Izuku gritted his teeth, lightning crackling around his legs as he moved. His storm power surged through his body, increasing his speed. With a sharp breath, he dodged the beast's next attack and jumped to its side, delivering a lightning-infused punch to its ribcage. Crack! The impact sent a powerful shockwave through the air, making the ground tremble. But the beast barely flinched. Instead, it swung its tail at him with terrifying speed. Izuku's eyes widened. Too fast dash. Wham! The tail slammed into his side, sending him flying. He crashed into the rocky ground, pain exploding in his ribs as he gasped for breath. DMN, I can only use 10% of my power. It's not enough. The beast didn't wait. It rushed forward, its glowing red eyes filled with hunger. Izuku struggled to push himself up. The storm inside him roared, but he couldn't fully unleash it. He had to fight smarter. The beast lunged again. Izuku gritted his teeth and waited, watching its movements, predicting its attack. The moment the beast struck, Izuku twisted his body, barely avoiding the claws, and jumped onto its back. His fingers sparked with lightning as he grabbed hold of the beast's thick hide. Let's see how you handle this. He sent a surge of electricity into the creature's body, lightning dancing across its form in a violent storm strike. Boom! The beast let out a thunderous roar as the electricity burned through its muscles. But it wasn't enough. With a vicious JRK, it threw Izuku off. Izuku skidded across the ground, barely managing to land on his feet. But the moment he looked up, the beast was already there. Slam! A massive claw struck him directly in the arm. Crack! Pain exploded in his body. Izuku's scream tore through the air as his left arm snapped. He collapsed onto one knee, clutching his broken, useless limb. The beast towered over him, its breath hot against his face. Izuku's vision blurred. He had almost no strength left. He was on the verge of death. No, I won't die here. Taking a deep, shaky breath, Izuku forced himself to think. He had one chance. One final strategy. He looked at the beast's legs. It was fast and strong, but its legs were thin compared to its massive body. That was the weakness. If he could take out its legs, it would collapse under its own weight. Gathering every ounce of strength he had left, Izuku pushed himself up. The beast lunged one last time. Izuku waited. At the last second, he dodged to the side and sent a storm-infused kick directly to the beast's front knee. Boom! The leg snapped with a sickening crack, and the beast let out a deafening roar of pain. Before it could recover, Izuku channeled all his remaining lightning into a final attack, Storm Fang Strike. He slammed his foot into the creature's other leg. Crack! The second leg shattered. The beast let out one last, agonized cry, then it collapsed, its massive body slamming into the ground with an earth-shaking crash. Izuku stood over its fallen form, gasping for breath. His arm was broken, his body aching, and he could barely stand. But he had won. A new threat. Just as Izuku was about to collapse, he heard footsteps. Someone was approaching. He turned, eyes heavy with exhaustion, and saw a boy standing a few feet away. The boy had sharp eyes, black hair with silver streaks, and a confident smirk on his face. Izuku immediately understood. This wasn't a rescuer. This boy was here to take his ration pack. Izuku forced himself to stand tall, glaring at him. The boy chuckled. "You look half dead," he said. "That fight must have been brutal. But looks like you still have something valuable." He activated his quirk, his body flickering as he dashed toward Izuku at inhuman speed. Izuku barely had time to react. He tried to raise his good arm, but his body was too slow. Wham! A powerful punch to his stomach sent him staggering back. Izuku gasped, barely keeping himself from falling. I can't fight back." The boy grabbed Izuku's ration pack. "Thanks for the meal." Then, without another word, he vanished into the forest. Izuku stood there, breathing heavily. His food was gone. His body was broken. And he still had 6 more days to survive. 12:2. The third day had arrived. Izuku sat inside a small cave, his back resting against the cold stone wall. The weather outside had shifted drastically, a brutal snowstorm raged, the wind howling like a wild beast. The white frost covered everything, making it nearly impossible to see beyond a few meters. He shivered violently. His fire, the one he had spent hours trying to light, barely flickered. The flames were small and weak, struggling to fight against the chilling wind that sneaked into the cave. It provided little warmth, but it was better than nothing. Izuku held out his hands toward it, his fingers numb and stiff from the cold. His breath came out in visible puffs, and his body ached all over. But the worst of it was his broken arm. He had torn his own shirt to wrap around it, using the fabric like a makeshift sling to keep it from moving too much. The pain had dulled slightly, but every time he shifted, a sharp sting shot through him. His torso was bare, his skin covered in goosebumps as the freezing wind bit at him. It. I didn't think it would get this cold. He took a deep breath and reached for the fruits he had gathered the previous day. They weren't much, just a handful of bitter, unfamiliar berries and a couple of strange, hard-skinned fruits. He wasn't even sure if they were safe to eat, but at this point, he had no choice. As he bit into one, his teeth ached from the cold. The juice was sour, but he forced himself to chew and swallow. I need to keep my strength up. I can't afford to collapse. The trial of survival, this was different from fighting. This wasn't about having the strongest quirk power or the best combat skills. This was about endurance. Out here, the weak didn't die from battle, they died from hunger, cold, and exhaustion. And Izuku was hanging by a thread. He was halfway through the area but still far from the checkpoint. He hadn't encountered any more monsters or people, a slide of luck, considering his current condition. If he had, he knew he would have been eliminated immediately. No food. No shelter. No medicine. And 4 more days to go. Izuku clenched his fist. His storm power stirred inside him, but it was dormant, unable to truly aid him in this situation. He could only use 10%, not enough to fight back properly, not enough to warm himself up, not enough to heal his wounds. All he could do was endure. His eyelids grew heavy, and his body begged for sleep. But Izuku knew better. If I sleep now, I might not wake up. A test of willpower to keep himself awake, he forced himself to think. What would happen next? There were still 50,000 participants at the start of this trial. By now, the number must have dropped drastically. Only 1,000 would make it through. Which meant the worst was yet to come. This isn't just about surviving nature. At some point, people will start hunting each other. His ration pack was already stolen, so he was a walking target for anyone desperate enough to attack. I need to keep moving, but in this condition, I won't last long. His body shook violently as another gust of icy wind swept through the cave. He gritted his teeth. No. I will survive. I have to. Izuku forced himself to sit up straighter. His body screamed in protest, but he ignored it. He needed to conserve energy, gather more food when the storm calmed, and find shelter better than this cave. His emerald eyes burned with determination. This trial wouldn't break him. No matter how cold, how harsh, how brutal it became, he would endure. Next day, the fourth day, was nearing its end. The dim glow of the setting sun painted the snow-covered landscape in shades of deep orange and purple. The air was still freezing, but the blizzard had finally stopped. The sky was clearer now, allowing Izuku to see further ahead. He sat in his small, dark cave, his back pressed against the cold stone wall. His fire had died hours ago, and his food supply was completely gone. His stomach ached, and his throat felt like sandpaper. His body screamed for nourishment, but there was nothing. I have to move. Izuku peeked outside, scanning the area. No beasts, no participants. It's safe. For now. His tracking bracelet flickered dimly on his wrist. The device kept track of his location, ensuring the instructors could intervene in case of a life-threatening emergency. It also provided a directional guide to the next checkpoint. He glanced at the display. Time, 6:02 p.m. Days remaining, 3 distance to checkpoint. Direction of checkpoint, upright arrow, and the uncertainty of how far he still had to go gnawed at his mind. He had barely made it halfway, and his body was already at its limit. No. I have to keep moving. If he stayed in the cave any longer, he would freeze or starve before reaching the checkpoint. This isn't just about fighting. This is about survival. With a deep breath, Izuku forced himself onto his feet and stepped out into the icy landscape. A desperate journey he walked. For an hour, Izuku trudged through the snow, his boots sinking into the icy terrain with each step. His body felt heavier, each movement more sluggish than the last. His breaths were ragged, his lungs burning from the cold. But the worst part. He had encountered nothing, no monsters, no enemies, no food, no shelter. Good. But also bad. He wasn't being hunted. But he also wasn't surviving. His throat burned from dehydration. Water. I need water. He searched desperately, but there was nothing. No rivers. No melted snow. Nothing. Izuku liked his cracked lips, but it only made him more aware of how parched he was. Breaking point 30 minutes later, his body finally gave in. His foot caught on a hidden rock, and he fell forward, crashing into the thick snow. The cold seeped into his bare skin, making his body tremble violently. He gritted his teeth, struggling to push himself up, but his arms refused to move. His broken arm throbbed in pain, and his entire body felt like lead. His vision blurred, and for the first time since the trial began. A horrifying thought crept into his mind. Maybe Phantom is wrong, maybe I can't do this. Maybe, this at the end for me. But then, his half-lidded emerald eyes flickered upward, and through his hazy vision, he saw something. A cave. Not far, just at the edge of his sight. Izuku gritted his teeth. If he didn't reach that cave, he wouldn't survive the night. No beasts had appeared yet, but now that the sun was gone, it was only a matter of time. And in his condition, he wouldn't be able to fight. No. I won't let this end here. The final push summoning every ounce of willpower he had left, Izuku forced his body to move. He couldn't walk. He couldn't even stand. So he crawled. Each movement sent sharp pain through his broken arm, but he ignored it. Just a little further. His hands sank into the icy snow, his breaths ragged and uneven. His vision darkened at the edges, but he didn't stop. I can't. I won't be eliminated here. 3 more days. He just had to hold on for 3 more days. The cave was right there. And so, with sheer determination, Izuku kept moving. The moment Izuku's hand grazed the cave's cold, stone floor, his body gave out. He collapsed. Darkness consumed him. His body was too weak, too drained to fight anymore. His broken arm throbbed, his muscles ached, and his mind was on the verge of shutting down completely. And then, a roaring storm surrounded him. Not outside. Inside his mind. Mind realm, the storm's judgment. Izuku's eyes snapped open. He was no longer in the cave. Instead, he stood in an endless void of swirling clouds and howling winds. The sky above him was an unforgiving storm, crackling with lightning and roaring thunder. Where is this? He turned, his emerald eyes flickering in confusion, and then, a deep, resonant voice echoed through the storm. You're in your mind realm. Izuku's breath hitched. He recognized that voice. It was his power. The very storm that lived within him. A towering figure formed from the raging winds and lightning itself appeared before him, its golden eyes piercing through the tempest. Izuku clenched his fists. Wasn't he in the form of a dragon last time? Why am I here? The storm's form shifted slightly, as if observing him. You lost consciousness, so I brought you here. Izuku's eyes widened in realization. No. No, I can't be here. If I'm here, that means, his heart pounded. He took a frantic step forward. I have to go back. If I don't, I'll fail the entrance exam. Send me back now. The storm remained silent for a moment before speaking. The way you are now, you'll fail anyway. Izuku froze. It's not something you can pass. The voice grew heavier, sharper. You are too weak for this trial. You even let that boy steal your food. Do you really think you can survive 3 more days? It's impossible. The words cut deeper than any wound. Izuku's breath quickened, his blood boiling. His body trembled, not from exhaustion, but from rage. And then, he snapped. Shut up. Izuku's voice thundered through the storm, raw and filled with fury. The winds around them surged, responding to his uncontrolled emotions. His emerald eyes burned with determination, his fists clenched so tightly that his nails dug into his palms. I will survive. His voice shook the very sky of the mind realm. I don't care how hard it is. I don't care if my body breaks. If you want to help, then help me. But if you don't, Izuku glared up at the storm, his voice dripping with pure, unshakable willpower. Then shut the hell up and stop talking bullshit. The storm rumbled, as if taken aback. Then, it smiled. Unlocking the first stage, a deep chuckle echoed through the sky. Good. The storm's golden eyes gleamed with approval. You have the fire. But fire alone won't keep you alive. Izuku's breath was still ragged, but he forced himself to stand firm. The storm's voice turned serious. I will help you. But for that, you must unlock the first stage of your power. Izuku's eyes narrowed. First stage. The storm swirled around him, its voice steady. The basics. The foundation of your strength. Without this, you will never truly wield me. Izuku frowned. What was it? What was the one thing he needed right now? He thought. Power. No, I already have that, but I can't use it properly. Strength. No, that won't matter if I collapse from exhaustion. Agility. No, that won't matter if I broke my leg, just like I broke my hand on the first day. Then what? His storm power roared around him, like always wild and untamed, but it wasn't guiding him this time. Izuku clenched his fists. His breath was slow and controlled now, his mind deep in thought. The past few days had been brutal. He had lost food, lost his strength, lost control. He had been fighting, but what had almost killed him? Not the monsters. Not the competitors. The elements. The cold. Mostly the exhaustion. It wasn't about attacking. It was about surviving. And in that moment, it clicked. His eyes widened. Endurance. Protection. His storm crackled in response, almost as if acknowledging his realization. I don't need more power right now. I need something that will keep me from falling apart. I need. His voice was barely above a whisper, Tempest Veil. His eyes frowned, wait. How do I know this name? Whatever. The moment he spoke those words, the entire storm raged. Thunder roared. Lightning flashed. Winds howled. Izuku gasped as a wave of energy surged through him, sending a powerful shiver down his spine. The storm's golden eyes gleamed. Now, prove that you are worthy of it. Suddenly, the winds turned against him. The storm itself lashed out, sending a torrent of raging winds, slashes of lightning, and piercing ice straight at him. Izuku barely had time to react. A blast of pure force knocked him back, sending him skidding across the endless storm-filled void. He gritted his teeth, digging his heels into the ground. So that's how it is. I have to fight for it. Izuku steadied his breath. He had faced monsters, competitors, and now, he had to face his own power. His emerald eyes burned with determination. Fine. Bring it on. With a deep breath, he closed his eyes and focused. He could feel it now, the storm has again turned wild. Untamed. Destructive. But there was something else hidden beneath it. Something deeper. A shield. A veil. A force that was meant to protect. If he could just control that too. The storm attacked again, but this time, Izuku didn't dodge. Instead, he let go of his fear and embraced the storm. Lightning crashed down upon him, but instead of harming him, it bent around his body. The violent winds that once tried to cut through him, now wrapped around him like armor. A soft glow surrounded his form, like a barrier of crackling energy and rushing wind. Izuku's eyes snapped open, glowing with powerful blue streaks of light. He had done it. He had unlocked the Tempest Veil, a powerful defensive ability that wrapped his body in a protective force of storm energy, shielding him from harsh conditions, healing minor wounds, and preventing exhaustion from overtaking him too quickly. It was exactly what he needed to survive. The storm chuckled. You figured it out really quickly. Good. Izuku smirked despite his exhaustion. He had won. Now with his new power he'll complete this trail at ease. Suddenly, a cold breeze brushed against Izuku's skin, stirring him awake. His emerald eyes fluttered open, greeted by the familiar darkness of the cave. I'm back. He slowly sat up, blinking as he adjusted to reality. His body still ached, his limbs heavy with exhaustion. Was it a dream? For a moment, doubt crept into his mind. But then, he felt it. A soft hum coursed through his body, like the whisper of a storm lingering beneath his skin. His breath hitched as he raised his good hand, and a faint veil of energy shimmered around his fingers, invisible yet tangible, like wind pressing against his skin. The Tempest Veil. It was real. A slow smile tugged at his lips. He clenched his fist, focusing on the power within him, and the air around him crackled faintly. It wasn't just raw energy, it was a protective force, shielding him, supporting him. Then, something else caught his attention. His broken arm. The sharp, unbearable pain had dulled. It was still fractured, but a soft warmth pulsed from within. It was healing. So this is what the first stage of my power does. It wasn't instant regeneration, but it was enough to speed up recovery and ease his pain. Izuku exhaled deeply, closing his eyes for a moment. He had barely survived these past 4 days. He had lost his food, been pushed to his limits, and nearly collapsed for good. But now, he had a fighting chance. The storm inside him had finally begun to take shape, no longer just wild destruction. It was his power. His shield. His will. Izuku clenched his jaw and slowly stood up, his eyes glowing with renewed determination. 3 more days. I will survive. 13:3. The crisp morning air filled Izuku's lungs as he moved forward, leaving the cave behind. Snow crunched beneath his boots, and the blinding sunlight reflected off the frost-covered landscape, making it difficult to see far ahead. His goal was simple: reach the checkpoint. But the journey was anything but easy. The environment was shifting again. The snow from the previous storm had hardened into ice in some areas, while in others, it melted into muddy slush. Every step was a challenge. Hours passed. It's evening. Izuku had covered a significant distance, guided by the tracking device on his wrist. But with every step, his body grew more exhausted. His stomach rumbled in protest. It had been over a day since he last ate. That wasn't even the worst of it. He wasn't alone. All around him, participants lurked in the distance, watching. They were just like him, tired, starving, and desperate. The trial had pushed everyone to their limits, and now survival was all that mattered. Izuku didn't let his guard down. He knew what was coming. And it didn't take long. The first attack came fast. Izuku barely had time to react before a blast of wind shot toward him from behind. His instincts screamed at him, and he rolled forward just in time to avoid the attack. The icy ground cracked where he had just been standing. When he turned, he saw them, a group of 5 participants. Each one looked just as battered as him, but their eyes burned with determination. They weren't here to fight for honor. They were here to eliminate him. Izuku exhaled, steadying his stance. His storm power crackled in the air around him. One of them smirked. "Hand over your ration pack." Izuku clenched his fists. "I don't have one." "TCH. That's too bad," another said. "Guess we'll just take you out instead." Without another word, they attacked. The battle began. One participant launched forward, his quirk enhancing his speed. He moved in a blur, aiming a fist at Izuku's ribs. Izuku dodged. The second fighter sent a spear of ice hurtling toward him, while the third followed up with an earth-shattering punch that cracked the ground. Izuku leaped backward, storm power flaring. His lightning-tinged wind erupted from his body, blasting back the first attacker. He spun, using the force of the wind to propel himself away from the incoming ice attack. But the fourth fighter, a girl with razor-sharp claws, closed the distance in an instant. Slash! Her claws raked across his side, tearing through his skin. Pain bloomed in his body, but then, something happened. Tempest Veil reacted. Before his eyes, the wound stitched itself back together. The pain faded, and his strength surged. His eyes widened. It wasn't just normal healing, it was God level. A grin spread across his face. For the first time since the trial began, he had an advantage. Izuku didn't hesitate. The wind howled around him as he unleashed his storm power, his movements becoming faster, sharper, deadlier. He dodged another ice spear and closed the distance in a blink. His fist, crackling with energy, slammed into the ice user's stomach. Boom! The fighter was sent flying back, crashing into a nearby tree. Izuku pivoted, narrowly avoiding another punch. The girl with the claws lunged again, but this time, Izuku didn't dodge. He let her attack land. Her claws sliced across his arm, but before she could pull away, Izuku grabbed her wrist. Her eyes widened. She had made a mistake. Izuku's wind surged around them both, trapping her in a vortex. She tried to break free but his grip was unyielding. He pulled her forward, spinning with the wind's momentum before hurling her into the ground. Thud. She didn't get up. The last two fighters hesitated. They had seen what happened. Izuku stood there, breathing slightly, but completely unharmed. They had wounded him but his body had already healed. He cracked his knuckles. Your turn. The wind roared. One of them cursed under his breath. Screw this. I'm out. He turned and ran. The last fighter, a bulky guy with brute strength, gritted his teeth. DMN coward, he muttered before glaring at Izuku. Fine. I'll take you down myself. He charged. Izuku's smirk widened. He welcomed the challenger. But, the fight lasted only a few more minutes. Izuku dodged, countered, and overwhelmed his opponent with a storm-powered assault. By the end of it, the last fighter was unconscious on the ground. Izuku exhaled, letting his storm power settle. His body ached. His muscles burned. But he was still standing. And that meant he was one step closer to victory. With a final glance at his fallen opponents, Izuku turned toward the horizon. He still had a trial to finish. Without wasting another second, he continued forward, determined to reach the finish line. The final stretch. Izuku trudged forward, his steps heavy but unwavering. The Tempest Veil protected his body from exhaustion and allowed his wounds to heal, but it did nothing for his growing hunger. His stomach clenched painfully, his body demanding food that wasn't there. 2 days without a proper meal. His limbs felt sluggish. Even though he wasn't as exhausted as before, his strength was fading. But then he saw it. The checkpoint. A spark of energy shot through his veins as his eyes widened in disbelief. There it was just ahead, past a rocky hill, the towering metal structure stood, marking the end of the trial. For a second, he didn't move. Then, pure joy flooded his chest. I did it. He jumped in excitement far higher than he intended. The moment his feet left the ground, he soared. The icy wind spiraled around him, responding to his emotions. He only realized how high he was when he looked down. He was nearly 3 stories in the air. And then he landed. Boom. The earth shook. The impact cracked the frozen ground beneath him, sending a powerful ripple outward. Snow scattered in every direction. Izuku blinked. Did I just? He looked down at the cracked ground, realization dawning. He had subconsciously used his storm power. A grin stretched across his face. This power, it's interesting than I thought. But he didn't have time to dwell on it. The checkpoint was right in front of him. Without hesitation, he sprinted forward. Arrival, rank 15. Izuku reached the large metallic checkpoint and pressed the verification button. A mechanical voice echoed, participant number 1173, position 15th, he froze. 15th. Izuku had expected to be in the top 800 to 900, maybe even the top, but 15th. This it clicked, his jaw clenched as he looked at the ranking screen. There were 14 others who had completed the trial before him. His mind raced. These people are monsters. Izuku knew he had gotten stronger, but now, he knew he was nowhere near the top. A smirk tugged at his lips. This is what I wanted. He thought about his past life, the days he spent with 1A's weaklings. I was getting tired of fighting the same opponents. His eyes widened as the thought fully registered. He shook his head. What am I thinking? Those were his ex-friends. They weren't weak, were they? But deep down, he knew the truth. Compared to these beasts in this trial, class 1A was nothing. He lay down, taking deep breaths. His body was sore, his muscles ached, but he had made it. And then a shadow loomed over him. 2 hands appeared in his view, one holding a bottle of water, the other holding an apple. Here, a voice said. Izuku sat up, looking at the 2 people in front of him. They were familiar. He had seen them on the battlefield before, but this was the first time they were interacting properly. He took the water first, gulping it down, before biting into the apple. The burst of sweetness made his body shiver in relief. The boy who handed him the apple chuckled. "Looks like you needed that." The girl beside him crossed her arms. "You pushed yourself too hard. If you had collapsed just a bit earlier, you wouldn't have made it in time." Izuku wiped his mouth, looking between them. "Thanks. Who are you two?" The boy grinned. "I'm Renji Saito." "Rank?" The girl smirked. "Kid Fujiwara." "Rank?" Izuku's eyes narrowed. Both of them ranked above him. Renji leaned back, looking at the ranking board. 15th place, huh? Not bad. You must have gone through hell to get here. Izuku smirked, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Yeah, something like that." Kid glanced at him. "Well, congratulations. You're officially in the third phase now." Izuku stretched his arms, feeling his muscles loosen. This was just the beginning. His smirk widened. He couldn't wait to fight against them. A tense encounter as Izuku, Renji, and Kid continued chatting. A voice interrupted them. "Oh, look who we have here." Izuku's body stiffened at the all-too-familiar tone. He slowly looked up and, there he was. Standing in front of him with a smug smirk was the same boy who had stolen his ration pack on the first day, right after Izuku had barely survived the fight against the six-legged monster. A low growl escaped Izuku's throat as he immediately stood up, his emerald eyes burning with fury. The boy's smirk widened. "What's with that look? Still bitter about the rations?" Before Izuku could snap back, Kid stepped forward, arms crossed. "Hey, Tetsuya Kurigane," she said sharply. "Stay away from Izuku and cut the mocking." Renji, now fully alert, stood beside Izuku and leaned in slightly. "You know him," he whispered. Izuku's jaw clenched. "Yeah. He stole my rations on the first day." Renji's eyebrows shot up in surprise before his expression turned serious. "That explains it, but if I were you, I'd be careful." Izuku turned to him, frowning. "Why?" Renji sighed, tilting his head toward Tetsuya. "Because he's ranked." Izuku's eyes widened. "What?" Renji nodded. "Yeah. He finished the trial on the second day. While we were all struggling to survive, he just breezed through it." Izuku's fists clenched. The second day. Meanwhile, in the background, Kid and Tetsuya were already in a full-blown argument. Kid versus Tetsuya, a verbal battle. Kid scoffed, glaring at Tetsuya. "You really enjoy looking down on people, don't you?" Tetsuya smirked, crossing his arms. "Not my fault if you're all slow. I finished early, got my rest, and now I get to watch all of you crawl to the finish line." Kid rolled her eyes. "You talk like you're some kind of god." Tetsuya chuckled. "Not a god. Just better." Kid clicked her tongue. "You're awfully arrogant for someone who had to steal food to survive." Tetsuya's smirk faltered for a fraction of a second before he recovered. "It's called strategy. You use whatever advantage you can get." Kid took a step closer, her crimson eyes sharp. "No, it's called being a coward." Tetsuya's smile twitched. "Oh. And what do you call someone who only ranked 9th? Clearly not the best, huh?" Kid's eyebrow twitched. "At least I didn't cheat my way through." Tetsuya's grin widened. "Cheating? Please. I simply played the game smarter than the rest of you." Kid narrowed her eyes. "Then tell me, what's your excuse for still hanging around here? Shouldn't the great rank one be off somewhere instead of bothering us lowly people?" Tetsuya chuckled. "Oh, I'm just enjoying the show. Watching the competition struggle is quite entertaining." Kid crossed her arms. "Right. Because you don't have any real friends, huh?" Tetsuya's expression darkened slightly. Renji smirked at the exchange and whispered to Izuku, "She's really laying into him." Izuku, however, wasn't listening. He was too busy staring at Tetsuya, at the boy who had stolen from him. The boy who had already finished the trial 3 days before him. Ranked the strongest competitor here. Izuku's fists clenched as a single thought burned in his mind. I'll surpass him. 14. The 7th and final day of the 7-day ordeal had arrived. The second trial had ended, and with it, tens of thousands had been eliminated. Thousands of thousands quitted due to not having any food. Many lost consciousness in cold snowy weather and the teachers had to go rescue them. Many fall on the traps of other contestants and so on. Thought many completed the test but was not able to get a spot on the top out of 50,000 participants, only 1,000 remained the strongest, the smartest, and the most resilient. They stood now on the vast battlefield, the cold morning wind brushing against their skin as they waited for their next challenge. Among them were those who had completed the trial days ago: Tetsuya Kurigane, Kid, Renji, Izuku, and 16 others. The top 20 had used their extra time wisely to train, sharpen their skills, and prepare for what was to come. And now, on the 7th day, the third test was about to begin. The announcement: a powerful gust of wind swept through the air, sending dust flying as the main invigilator descended from above. It was the same invigilator who had overseen the first and second trials, the man who had watched from above, emotionless, as thousands fought, bled, and failed. His piercing eyes scanned the survivors, his gaze cold and calculating. "Congratulations," he said, his deep voice echoing across the battlefield. "You have all endured, fought, and proven yourselves worthy of standing here today." Some students stood proudly, while others, exhausted and battered, simply clenched their fists. "But don't think for a second that you are safe," the invigilator continued. "You are only halfway through." A hush fell over the crowd. "For the third trial, you will face each other." Eyes widened. Murmurs spread through the crowd. "This will be a combat test. A battle to determine who among you truly has what it takes to move forward." The murmurs turned into full-fledged whispers. 1,000 students. 500 would pass. That meant 500 would be eliminated here and now. Izuku clenched his fists, his heartbeat quickening with anticipation. "This test is simple," the invigilator continued. "Each of you will draw a name. The name you draw will be your opponent. You fight, and the winner moves on." Tetsuya smirked. "Now this is interesting." Renji cracked his knuckles. "Finally, we get to see what everyone is really made of." Kid sighed. "At least it's straightforward this time." But Izuku's blood was boiling with excitement. A real battle. No more surviving, no more running, just a fight to prove his new strength. "I can't wait to use my power against powerful opponents." "Now move towards the waiting room," the invigilator said, and took his seat. The waiting room was filled with tension. The participants gathered inside, waiting for their names to be called. Some were nervous, some focused, and others calmly prepared for their upcoming battles. A large TV screen on the wall displayed the fighting arena, where the battles would take place. The remaining 1,000 participants were now just one step away from proving themselves. The doors opened, and a normal-looking professor walked in. Unlike the intimidating invigilator, this man seemed relaxed and professional. "All right, listen up," he said, adjusting his glasses. "Your fights will be determined by your ranking from the second trial. The first-ranked student will go first, followed by the second, third, and so on." Whispers spread through the room. "Tetsuya's up first, huh?" Tetsuya smirked, glancing toward the green-haired boy. Izuku, as expected, simply grinned. "When it's your turn," the professor continued, "you will head to the arena, where a bowl will be brought to you containing folded papers with names. You will draw a name, and whoever's name appears will be your opponent." Some students tensed at that. "You might get someone close to your rank, or someone far below you. That's part of the challenge. Izuku nodded to himself. The system was fair, it mirrored the unpredictability of real battles. Now, the professor adjusted his glasses again. Rank 1, Tetsuya Kurogane stepped forward. Tetsuya smirked, turning his head slightly. His golden eyes met Izuku's emerald ones. A silent challenge passed between them. Izuku smirked back. They were both itching to fight. With a lazy stretch, Tetsuya walked toward the exit, his white coat swaying behind him. The room was silent as he left. The fighting arena. As Tetsuya entered the colossal battle arena, his golden gaze swept across the massive stands. The eliminated participants were seated in the audience, watching the entrance exam continue. Some looked bitter about their loss, while others seemed genuinely interested in watching the remaining competitors fight. The battle stage was massive, built with reinforced steel and stone, ensuring even the most destructive quirks wouldn't easily destroy it. A man dressed in black approached, carrying a large bowl filled with folded papers. Tetsuya cracked his knuckles, his smirk widening. Without hesitation, he reached in, grabbing one paper. Unfolding it, he read the name. Rank 412 A low-ranked student. Interesting. The professor checked the list, then called out, Rank 412, Sota Hanagawa. Step forward. A boy froze inside the waiting room, staring at the screen. His face went pale. What? That's not fair. Murmurs erupted around him as he stood up, anger and fear evident in his expression. He got matched with Tetsuya Kurogane. That's insane. He's ranked, there's no way Hanagawa stands a chance. This isn't a fair fight. Hanagawa clenched his fists, his face twisting with frustration. I refuse. I won't fight. This isn't fair. Others murmured in agreement, some nodding as they backed him up. Then, the doors to the waiting room slammed open. A powerful, suffocating presence entered. The main invigilator. A sharp silence fell across the room. All students froze, feeling a crushing weight settle over them. The invigilator's eyes were sharp, cold, and unwavering. You do not get to decide whether a fight is fair or not. His voice was calm, yet it sent chills down everyone's spine. In the real world, will you get to choose your opponent? Will villains fight you fairly? His gaze locked onto Hanagawa, who swallowed hard. If a villain stronger than you appears, will you refuse to fight because it's unfair? A thick silence. And no, but nothing. The invigilator's voice cut through the room like a blade. This is a test of survival, not a game. You think real battles are fair? You think heroes always fight opponents of the same level? No one spoke. You will either fight or you can go sit with the audience. With that, the invigilator turned on his heel and walked out. The room remained deathly silent. Izuku, Ķīd, and Renji exchanged glances. This was reality. Hanagawa, now pale and shaking, was left with no choice. He stepped forward. The battle was on. The arena fell silent as Sota Hanagawa stepped forward. His breathing was uneven, but he forced himself to stand tall. Across from him, Tetsuya Kurogane stood relaxed, his golden eyes half-lidded, as if he were bored already. Sota clenched his fists. I can't back down. Even if the opponent was rank 1, even if he had no chance, he had to try. The professor raised his hand. Begin. Sota moved first. His feet dug into the ground as he shot forward, his speed impressive. He was fast, really fast. In a blink, he closed the gap, his fists glowing with his energy-based quirk. With a sharp inhale, he launched a barrage of punches, his strikes rapid and calculated. Each blow cut through the air like WHPS. But not a single punch landed. Tetsuya didn't move from his spot. He simply tilted his head, shifted his feet, and leaned slightly, dodging everything with the bare minimum of effort. Sota's heart pounded. How? Gritting his teeth, he unleashed a powerful energy wave, aiming to at least make Tetsuya block. The moment the attack got close, Tetsuya simply raised his hand. And with a single swipe, the energy dispersed into nothing. Soda's eyes widened in horror. What? Pathetic, Tetsuya muttered. And then, he vanished. A gust of wind followed as Tetsuya appeared behind Soda in an instant. Before Soda could even react, a single, casual punch to his gut sent him flying. His body bounced off the ground, rolling several times before he barely managed to stop himself. Pain exploded in his stomach. He clutched his abdomen, gasping for air. His vision blurred, but he forced himself up. Tetsuya, still standing exactly where he was, sighed. Is that all? Soda growled, his fear turning into rage. He refused to lose without a fight. Summoning all his strength, he roared, his body flaring with energy. Take this. His arms swung in a cross motion, unleashing a massive explosion of energy. The ground shook as the blast tore toward Tetsuya. Smoke and dust filled the air. The crowd gasped. Even the contestants in the waiting room leaned forward, watching intently. For a moment there was silence. Then, a voice cut through the dust. That was it. As the smoke cleared, Tetsuya stood there, completely unharmed. Not a single scratch. Not even dust on his uniform. Soda's blood ran cold. How? Tetsuya smirked. You're wasting your energy. And before Soda could react, Tetsuya finally moved. He was a blur. Soda barely saw it before a foot slammed into his side. The impact was like a meteor. Soda's body shot across the battlefield, skidding violently before crashing into the reinforced walls. Cracks spiderwebbed across the stone. Silence. The professor walked forward. Soda Hanagawa has been defeated. Inside the waiting room a heavy silence filled the waiting room. The contestants who had been watching were stunned. Some gulped. What was that? He destroyed him like it was nothing, he didn't even try. It wasn't just that Tetsuya won. It was how easily he won. Some students had doubted the rankings, thinking maybe the first few had just gotten lucky in the trial. But after seeing this, no one doubted Tetsuya's or any of the top-ranking contestants' strength anymore. Renji exhaled sharply. TCH. This guy, he's a complete monster. Keed crossed her arms. I expected him to be strong, but that was just unfair. Many in the waiting room were shaken. But one person, Izuku Midoriya, was deep in thought. Izuku's reaction the moment Tetsuya moved, Izuku had felt something. A familiar sensation. Like something inside him was resonating with Tetsuya's power. What is this? It wasn't just because Tetsuya was strong. It was because his power felt different from everyone else's. It wasn't a quirk. Just like Izuku's storm, Tetsuya's power felt like it came from something far deeper. Is he like me? Izuku's fingers clenched. For the first time in a long while, he felt genuine excitement. A real challenge. A real rival. His storm powers stirred, reacting to this new opponent. Izuku smirked to himself. This exam just got a lot more interesting. 15-2. The battles continued, and as expected, the top-ranked contestants dominated. The second-ranked contestant, Alistair Greaves from England, made quick work of his opponent. His enhanced reflexes and close combat skills made him an overwhelming force. The third-ranked contestant, Rissy Delgado from the Philippines, demonstrated unmatched agility and control over her quirk, a unique ability that allowed her to create sharp energy constructs. Her victory was swift. The fourth-ranked contestant, Elijah Cole from America, used brute strength and a defense ability that made his skin as hard as steel. His match ended in a knockout within minutes. The fifth-ranked contestant, Mei Lin Zhao from China, displayed an impressive combination of speed and precision, overwhelming her opponent with a series of rapid attacks. With each victory of a top-ranked contestant, the low-ranked ones started losing hope. We don't stand a chance. All of them are too powerful. Meanwhile, the top-ranked contestants started to feel something else, overconfidence. These low-rankers are nothing. Winning is too easy. Some of them even started underestimating their opponents, walking into the battles with overwhelming arrogance. And that's when everything changed. Sixth-ranked contestant, Ricardo Vasquez from Spain, entered his match with a smug grin, confident that he would end it quickly. His opponent. Rank 8 girl named Lucia Moreau from France. The fight began, and Ricardo, believing his victory was assured, didn't take it seriously. That was his mistake. Lucia exploited his arrogance. She dodged his attacks with precision, countering with swift, well-placed strikes. And when Ricardo finally realized she was a real threat, it was too late. Lucia delivered a decisive blow, knocking him out. The arena erupted in shock. A low-ranked contestant had beaten one of the best. And it wasn't just her. The seventh-ranked contestant, Hugo Brandt from Germany, fell in a similar fashion. His opponent. Rank 402, Mark Rivera from Brazil. Mark waited patiently, observing Hugo's fighting style before exploiting his weaknesses. The result. Hugo lay unconscious on the battlefield. The low-ranked contestants cheered. Hope returned to their eyes. We can win. The top-ranked contestants, on the other hand, were shaken. If they could lose, then we can too. And just when the tension reached its peak, eighth-ranked contestant, Leonid Petrov from Russia, stepped into the arena with a stoic expression. His opponent. Rank 21, Ezra Finn from Australia. The fight was brutal. Both fighters were skilled, powerful, and relentless. Blow after blow, they clashed with equal force. Leonid's raw strength met Ezra's speed and technique. Minutes passed, neither could gain the upper hand. And then, with one final exchange, they both collapsed at the same time. A draw. They were both carried off to the infirmary, their bodies covered in bruises and cuts. The professor sighed, looking at the students. This is what happens when both fighters refuse to give up. The room grew silent. Even those who had been cocky a few minutes ago were now uneasy. ɪᴢᴜᴜ's anxiety back in the waiting room, ɪᴢᴜ clenched her fists, staring at the screen. Her turn was getting closer. Her stomach churned, and her heart pounded. I don't know if I can do this, she mumbled, trying to hide her nervousness. Renji placed a hand on her shoulder. You've trained so hard. You got this. Izuku, who was standing beside her, gave her a small smile. Yeah. You're strong, ɪᴢᴜ. And besides, you hate losing, don't you? ɪᴢᴜ sighed, forcing a smirk. Yeah, I do, but deep inside, she was still scared. What if I lose? What if I embarrass myself? And then, a familiar, irritating voice cut through the air. Well, Tetsuya drawled, walking over with his signature smirk. ɪᴢᴜ instantly stiffened, her nerves returning full force. Tetsuya leaned closer, grinning. You're scared, aren't you? ɪᴢᴜ scowled. Shut up, Tetsuya. He chuckled. You know, I get why. You're weak. That's why you're nervous. ɪᴢᴜ's eyes twitched. Izuku frowned. Tetsuya, knock it off. But Tetsuya ignored him, his golden eyes gleaming. If you're this scared before the fight even starts, you might as well just give up now. ɪᴢᴜ gritted her teeth. She wanted to yell at him. To throw something at his smug face. But, instead, something strange happened. Her nervousness faded. In its place. Pure irritation. Tetsuya kept mocking her. And she started arguing back. Before she even realized it, she had completely forgotten her fear. And that's when the professor called her name. Kida-sano. You're up. She paused. Then, with an exaggerated huff, she stomped toward the exit. "I'll deal with you later, Tetsuya." Tetsuya smirked. Looking forward to it. Izuku and Renji watched her go. Renji sighed. "You know. I think Tetsuya actually helped her." Izuku chuckled. "Yeah. But don't tell him that. His ego is already big enough." Ķīd's fight, overcoming the ODDS. Ķīd took a deep breath, stepping onto the battlefield. The towering figure of Daisuke Hanamura stood across from her, his muscles rippling like steel cables beneath his uniform. He ranked 11th in the entire competition, and his about this strength, Ķīd saw him fought during the second trail. But Ķīd wasn't afraid. She was ready. The air was thick with tension as the referee raised his hand. "Begin." Daisuke exploded forward. The ground trembled beneath his charge, dust kicking up as his sheer weight compressed the battlefield. Ķīd barely had time to react before his fist came down like a hammer, aiming to flatten her where she stood. But she wasn't there. She was a blur, her body twisting to the side at the last possible moment, his fist slamming into the ground with enough force to leave a crater. But Ķīd didn't stop at dodging. She retaliated instantly, flicking her wrist. A shimmer of blue energy crackled in the air. Her quirk, Phantom Mirage, came to life. A perfect illusion of herself split off, standing right in front of Daisuke, taunting him with a cocky grin. His eyes widened for a split second before he swung his fist at it, only for it to phase right through. The real Ķīd was already behind him. With a swift kick, she struck the back of his knee, forcing him to stumble. But even as he buckled, Daisuke twisted his massive frame, swinging an arm the size of a battering ram toward her. Ķīd barely managed to duck. Too close. The sheer force of his swing sent shockwaves rippling through the air, shattering the ground beneath them. A single direct hit would end her. She had to be smarter. Faster. Trickier. Ķīd dashed backward, multiplying her mirages in a flash of light. 3 more versions of herself now surrounded Daisuke, each of them moving in perfect synchronization. They all darted around him, their footsteps eerily silent, as if ghosts were circling their prey. Daisuke gritted his teeth. "Cheap tricks won't save you," he bellowed, slamming his foot down with a seismic stomp. The battlefield quaked, and 2 of her illusions flickered out as dust and debris erupted into the air. But Ķīd had already anticipated it. One illusion remained, and it wasn't the fake one. The moment Daisuke assumed it was another mirage, Ķīd struck for real. She leaped, flipping midair, and delivered a devastating spinning kick straight to his jaw. The impact sent him staggering, his head snapping back from the force. A gasp rippled through the audience. She was winning. Daisuke let out a growl, his frustration boiling over. His muscles swelling as he unleashed his full strength. With a furious roar, he charged again, this time faster, more relentless. She wouldn't escape this time. Or so he thought. Ķīd's eyes gleamed. She let him come close, too close. At the last possible moment, she jumped high, flipping over him just as he swung his fist. But before he could recover, she reached out, and touched his shadow. A surge of blue light spread across the ground. Her secondary quirk, Mirage Bind. Daisuke's body suddenly froze mid-motion, his shadow holding him in place like invisible chains had wrapped around him. What? His eyes widened in shock as he struggled, but it was too late. Ķīd landed behind him, crouching low, her breath steady. And then, she delivered the finishing blow. With a burst of speed, she launched herself forward, her foot glowing with an amplified Phantom Mirage strike, a kick so fast it left afterimages trailing in its wake. Her attack slammed straight into his back with an impact that sent a shockwave rippling across the arena. Boom! Daisuke crashed to the ground, the sheer force sending crack spider webbing across the battlefield. A thick cloud of dust billowed into the air. Silence. Then, the referee raised his hand. Winner, ɪᴢᴜᴜ Sakamura. The crowd erupted. ɪᴢᴜᴜ stood there, breathing, hands on her knees. A victorious smirk tugged at her lips as she glanced up at the screen displaying the waiting room. Tetsuya's voice crackled through the speakers. Ha! Not bad. ɪᴢᴜ chuckled, rolling her shoulders. DMN right. Not bad. ɪᴢᴜ stepped off the battlefield, her breath still heavy, but her smirk never wavered. As soon as she entered the waiting room, a few heads turned toward her, some in awe, others in admiration. That was amazing, ɪᴢᴜ. Renji was the first to rush over, grinning widely as he clapped her on the back. You had him dancing in circles. Izuku nodded enthusiastically beside him. Seriously. The way you used your illusions and then that mirage bind at the end, it was genius. His eyes sparkled with excitement. ɪᴢᴜ stretched her arms, rolling her shoulders with a satisfied smirk. Well, it wasn't easy, but I wasn't about to lose to brute force alone. As more contestants gathered around, engaging in excited chatter about the match, ɪᴢᴜ got pulled into. Meanwhile, near the back of the room, Tetsuya leaned against the wall. His sharp eyes narrowed slightly in thought before he whispered to the person beside him, not bad. She's intelligent. Yeah, I know, came the amused response. Tetsuya's entire body stiffened. His head snapped to the side, eyes widening as he finally registered the voice. Izuku was standing next to him, barely containing his laughter. You. Tetsuya started, glaring, but Izuku had already turned away, a mischievous smile playing on his lips as he pretended nothing had happened. Tetsuya clicked his tongue, shaking his head as he muttered, DMN Emerald under his breath. But even he couldn't deny the small smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. 16-3. The battle before Renji's match was nothing extraordinary. The 10th rank contestant easily overpowered his opponent, a mid-ranker who lacked proper combat training. Izuku watched with a frown. How did that guy even pass the first two trials? But that didn't matter now. Because now, it was Renji's turn. The professor in the waiting room called his name. Rank 12, Renji, you're up. Renji turned to ɪᴢᴜ and waved, then faced Izuku, leaning in to whisper, I hope my opponent isn't you. I want us to be classmates. Izuku smiled. He's thinking the same thing. Same here, he whispered back. I want to enter the academy with you both. So let's not get in each other's way just yet. Both chuckled before Renji stepped out of the waiting room, heading toward the battlefield. The man with bowl stepped forward and Renji picked a fold paper. He read the rank written on it, rank 13, rank 13th, Arya Lennox. You're up. Renji's opponent was Arya Lennox, the 13th rank contestant from England. A strong fighter with a quirk that enhanced her reflexes and agility, allowing her to dodge and counter with precision. The arena erupted in cheers as they both faced each other. Arya smirked. We meet again, Ice Prince. Let's see if your cold touch can keep up with my speed this time. Renji's eyes glowed icy blue, his breath forming mist in the air. Ice Prince. I like that. Arya chuckled. Begin, boom. The match exploded into action. Arya vanished from sight, her enhanced speed making her a blur. Renji didn't panic. He simply exhaled. Ice spread across the battlefield instantly, creating a frozen domain. Arya's speed. Completely countered. She skidded on the ice, struggling to maintain balance. Renji smirked. Not so fast anymore, are you? Arya clicked her tongue. Smart. But, she flipped mid-air, landing perfectly. Renji's eyes narrowed. She adapted fast. She launched forward, dodging Renji's icicle barrage and closing the distance, aiming for his blind spot. But Renji. He was already 3 steps ahead. A pillar of ice shot up, blocking her attack. She spun, attacking from another angle, only for the ice beneath her feet to shatter. She fell, just as Rinji's fist came crashing down. Boom. She barely rolled away in time. Arya breathed, eyes wide. "You're calculating everything." Renji shrugged. "That's how I fight." She grinned. "I like it. But I'm not done yet." The stadium erupts. The audience was on fire. Even ɪᴢᴜ and Izuku leaned forward, their eyes glued to the match. "He's amazing," ɪᴢᴜ muttered. Izuku smiled. "Yeah. He reminds me of my old self." ɪᴢᴜ turned and asked, "What?" Izuku shook his head, Nothing. Focus on Renji's match." ɪᴢᴜ looked at Izuku for a moment, then shrugged it off and turned towards the match. While Izuku thought, "Back when I relied purely on strategy, analysis, and combat skills. Before his storm powers changed everything. Old habits didn't die easily. And seeing Renji fight like that, it made Izuku excited. Excited to fight strong opponents again." The match continued, both fighters pushing each other to the limit. Blades of ice clashed against rapid, unpredictable strikes. Every move, every step, calculated, precise, intense. Two geniuses of battle. One would fall. One would win. And Izuku. He couldn't wait to see who. The battle had been intense. Arya was fast, but Renji was smarter. She lunged at him again, zigzagging unpredictably to avoid his ice attacks. Renji stood still, calm. Focused. And then, a trap. Just as Arya stepped forward for her finishing blow, the ice beneath her suddenly shifted. Not solid. Not slippery. Cracked. She had unknowingly stepped into a thinly layered ice formation, a technique Renji had been setting up throughout the fight. Snap. The ice shattered beneath her feet, sending her tumbling just for a second. But that second was all Renji needed. He twisted his body mid-step, unleashing a sweeping crescent kick infused with a burst of icy energy. Crash. Arya was sent skidding across the battlefield, her back hitting the frozen ground. She tried to get up, but Renji was already standing above her, hand extended forward, an icicle aimed near her throat. The referee raised his hand. Winner, Renji Yukishiro. Renji exhaled, letting the ice dissipate. Then, without hesitation, he offered his hand to Arya. Arya stared at it for a moment before sighing and grabbing it. He pulled her up. She dusted off her jacket and smirked. "You really don't give people a chance, huh?" Renji grinned. "Not when I'm fighting someone as good as you." Arya chuckled. "Guess I'll have to train harder. Next time, I'm winning. So don't get kicked out, next year I'm coming again." Renji smirked. "I'll be waiting for that rematch." With a final nod, Arya walked toward the exit, disappearing into the tunnel. Renji, feeling the exhaustion settle in, turned and headed toward the waiting room. The moment he stepped inside, bam. A bone-crushing hug engulfed him. "You were amazing." Renji barely had time to react before, smack. ɪᴢᴜ whacked the back of his head. "Ow, what was that for?" Renji yelped. ɪᴢᴜ huffed. "For making me nervous, idiot." Renji groaned. "That makes no sense." Izuku laughed, finally letting go. "But seriously, that was incredible. Congrats, Renji." Renji, rubbing his head, grinned. "Thanks. But I still have a long way to go." ɪᴢᴜ scoffed. At least you're not cocky about it." Izuku chuckled. Renji truly was something else. Izuku's match, the 14th ranked match, was in full swing. ɪᴢᴜ and Renji sat on the bench, watching with interest, but Izuku stood near the corner, his heart beating steadily. His match was next. Excitement and nervousness churned inside him. Not because of his opponent, but because of his own power. What if I use too much? What if I lose control again? But before his thoughts could spiral further, Tetsuya appeared beside him with his usual smirk. You're scared, aren't you? Izuku blinked before scoffing. Hardly. Tetsuya chuckled. Come on, man. I have high expectations from you. You better make it into the academy. I want to fight you, so don't disappoint me. Izuku met his gaze and smirked. I'll definitely live up to your expectations, or maybe even surprise you. Tetsuya grinned. Yeah, you better. I hope you're stronger than when I saw you fight that monster on the first day of the second trial. Izuku's green eyes gleamed. Well, you'll get to see that now. Before Tetsuya could respond, the professor called out, Rank 15th, Izuku Midoriya, you're up. Hearing this, ɪᴢᴜᴜ got up from their seats and come towards Izuku. Izuku took a deep breath and nodded. Renji patted his shoulder and gave him a thumbs up. Go get M. Ɪᴢᴜ gave him a confident nod. With that, Izuku stepped out onto the arena. A man approached, carrying a large bowl filled with folded papers. Izuku reached in and pulled out a slip, unfolding it. 16th rank. The announcer's voice echoed through the arena, 16th rank contestant, please step forward. A boy emerged from the opposite tunnel. Izuku's eyes narrowed as he recognized him immediately. He's the one who completed the second trial just a second after me. Their gazes locked. No words. Just silent acknowledgement. They stepped forward, facing each other. The tension was thick. The announcer raised his hand, begin. The storm unleashed the moment the match started. Izuku's opponent moved fast. His quirk activated instantly, Doppel Blitz. His entire body flickered for a second before, two more copies of him appeared, moving in sync. Izuku exhaled slowly. Illusions. No, they feel real. After images. No, they're solid. A duplication quirk. The three figures darted toward him in a coordinated assault. Izuku stood still. Calm. Unshaken. Then, a shift in the air. The wind curled around him, his coat rustling slightly. The moment the first strike neared, Izuku disappeared. No. Not disappeared. The storm completely surrounded him. A violent gust of wind erupted around him, sending the three opponents stumbling backward. Izuku stood in the eye of the storm, his body wrapped in a swirling veil of wind. The first stage of his power. Tempest Veil. Not only did it serve as a defensive barrier, but the wind itself healed his body, accelerating his stamina regeneration. His opponent clicked his tongue. Then, the three figures surged forward again. This time, they moved unpredictably, weaving in and out of each other, trying to confuse Izuku. A feint from the left. A real attack from the right. Another from behind. Izuku barely had time to react, until his instincts took over. He moved fluidly, his storm veil shifting around him, blocking each attack with the precise amount of wind force needed. One punch. The wind absorbed it. A kick from behind. The air twisted, redirecting the attack's force away. The clones pulled back. Izuku smirked. You rely too much on numbers. His opponent's eyes narrowed. Then, he switched tactics. The three copies suddenly merged back into one, then split again. This time, there were 6 of him. Izuku's smirk widened. Good. Let's turn things up, then. He inhaled. Deep. Power surged inside him. The raw, untamed force of the wild storm dragon within. He exhaled, and the entire battlefield erupted into a powerful vortex. The announcer had to take a step back as the stadium shook under the weight of Izuku's power. Wind roared, rising like an incoming hurricane. Izuku's eyes gleamed icy blue for a brief moment, and then, he moved. Fast. Faster than the storm itself. In an instant, he was behind his opponent. Then to the side. Then above him, his movements unpredictable, his body one with the wind. Boom. A devastating air pressure strike landed against his opponent's side, sending him skidding across the battlefield. The 16th rank contestant coughed, but gritted his teeth, forcing himself back up. Izuku respected that. But it was over. He moved again, this time appearing right in front of him. Storm Fong. A concentrated slice of wind pressure formed around Izuku's fingers, and with one swift motion, he sliced through the clones, dispersing them instantly. Before his opponent could react, Izuku delivered the final blow. A spinning, storm-infused kick. Wham! The 16th rank contestant hit the ground, hard. The referee raised his hand. Winner, Izuku Midoriya. The wind settled. Izuku released his power, feeling the last remnants of the storm dissipate. He walked over to his opponent, offering his hand. The boy hesitated, then took it. That was insane, he muttered. Izuku chuckled. You were strong too. If you refine your quirk more, you'll be even better. The boy sighed but smiled. I'll keep that in mind. Izuku helped him up before turning back toward the waiting room. When he entered, he felt a familiar gaze on him. He turned slightly. Tetsuya stood in the corner on the shadows, arms crossed, a sharp smirk on his face. Now that, he said, his voice low, was interesting. Izuku simply grinned. He had proved his strength today. 17. The arena had become a battlefield, hundreds of contestants had clashed. Blades against shields. Fists against quirk-enhanced defenses. The air was thick with tension, with the weight of expectation, and with the sharp scent of sweat and blood. This wasn't just a tournament. It was a test of survival. Out of nearly 400 fights, every match told a different story. Some battles were fought with unyielding determination, contestants who had poured years of effort into their training, their bodies moving with discipline and experience. Others ended in moments, shattered by a single overwhelming blow. And then there were the ones who, despite making it this far, gave up. Some walked into the ring, facing their opponent, and saw only failure. The weight of the roaring crowd pressed down on them, suffocating. Their hands trembled, their knees buckled. And before the match could even begin, they quit. A sharp breath. A raised hand. A choked out, I forfeit. For them, the fight was over before it started. Not because of their strength. But because of fear, of rank difference. And fear was merciless. Even more brutal than those who tried to cheat. It happened on occasion, desperation twisting into deception. An unnoticed illegal gadget. A hidden weapon. A subtle manipulation of the rules. They thought they were clever. They thought no one would notice. But the Academy was always watching, and the moment their deception was discovered, disqualification. No second chances. No arguments. No sympathy. It was a reminder to everyone else. This school didn't want cowards. Or cheaters. It wants fighters, fearless fighters. From the waiting room, Izuku sat with Ķīd, Renji, and the rest of their growing circle of friends, their eyes fixed on the screens. The battles raged on below them, each one adding to the long list of eliminated contestants. They're now already on their second day of the third trial. And still, no rest. No breaks. No mercy. Tests continued without any break. Contestants were being thrown into match after match, exhaustion weighing heavy on their shoulders. Izuku could see it, the fatigue settling into the way they moved, the way some hesitated before their fights, the way their breath came faster than it should. They were reaching their limits. And yet, there was no stopping. Not until this trial ended. Izuku clenched his fists, his mind already preparing. He knew. The next test would be soon. And he needed to be ready. The final step, the waiting room had been filled with nothing but silence and tension. 3 days. That's how long the third trial had taken to complete. 3 days of non-stop fighting. 3 days of strategy, exhaustion, and survival. Izuku, Ķīd, Renji, Tetsuya, and many others had spent the entire time watching, analyzing, learning. Every fight had been a lesson. Every contestant a potential future opponent. They memorized quirks, fighting styles, strengths, and weaknesses. Some had already begun discussing possible strategies for future battles. Yet, despite all their focus, no one knew what the fourth and final trial would be. How many people would pass? How many would be eliminated? The tension in the room was suffocating. It hung over them like a dark cloud, heavy and unrelenting. Then, the door creaked open. The professor entered, eyes scanning the room. All remaining contestants, come outside. Invigilator Zephyr is waiting for you. The announcement was swift, final, and sent a ripple of unease through the group. For a split second, no one moved. Then, one by one, they rose to their feet. Without a word, they followed the professor out of the waiting room. The corridor stretched ahead, eerily silent except for the sounds of footsteps. Izuku kept his gaze forward, noticing something strange. They weren't heading toward the exam grounds. Instead, they were moving in the opposite direction. His brows furrowed in thought. Where are they taking us? No one dared to ask. Everyone simply walked, their nerves on edge. Then, they reached a building. It stood tall, separate from the exam center, looming over them like a silent guardian. Izuku felt a flicker of confusion. What is this place? But before he could dwell on it, they were ushered inside. Up they climbed. 1 floor. 2 floors. 3. 4. 5. The ascent was slow, tense, suffocating. And when they finally arrived, the main invigilator, Zephyr, was waiting for them. His sharp gaze swept over the group, unreadable. The professor who had led them here stepped aside and silently exited the room. Now, it was just them. The remaining contestants. A heavy silence settled over the room as the students stood, their backs straight, their eyes locked onto the main invigilator, Zephyr. His gaze swept over them, sharp and piercing, as if measuring each one's worth. The weight of his unspoken judgment pressed down on the contestants, making their breaths feel heavy. Then, finally, he spoke. His voice was cold and authoritative, cutting through the tension like a blade. You 350 students have proven yourselves to be among the strongest of those who participated. However, it was unfortunate that many chose to quit at the last moment. Many others tried to cheat. But in the end, that was a blessing in disguise. His eyes narrowed, his tone unwavering. Our academy has no place for cowards or cheaters. We want fighters. A wave of murmurs and whispering spread through the contestants. Even Izuku and his group felt the need to discuss among themselves. Ķīd leaned in slightly, whispering, that means they saw everything in detail. About our tactics, fighting style, strategies. Renji crossed his arms, a smirk playing on his lips. Good. No point in having weaklings in the academy. Izuku, however, was more focused on something else. Even after all those battles, there's still another test. What kind of challenge could they possibly throw at us now? But before anyone could voice more thoughts, Zephyr's voice cut through the murmurs once more. Only 57 of you will pass. The rest, 293 of you, will be going home after coming this far. Silence. A silence so profound that even the air felt heavier. Some students visibly tensed. Others clenched their fists, their expressions twisting in shock, disbelief, and even fear. They had fought tooth and nail to survive 3 brutal days of combat, 7 days in strange weather, and now, nearly all of them would still be eliminated. The tension in the room became suffocating. Whispers started again, more frantic this time. Izuku turned to Renji and ɪᴢᴜᴜ, his expression serious. This is insane. That's way too few people passing. Renji, ever the strategist, rubbed his chin. That means the final test is going to be something big. ɪᴢᴜᴜ nodded. Yeah. Something that will decide once and for all who actually deserves to be here. Izuku bit the inside of his cheek, processing the situation. He had already come so far. Had already pushed himself to his limits. Had already given everything he has till now in each of his fights. And yet, even that wasn't enough. What kind of trial could possibly decide something this important? Before they could continue their discussion, Zephyr's voice boomed once more. That being said, the murmuring immediately stopped. Every pair of eyes locked onto the invigilator. That number is not final. Izuku's eyes widened. Not final. Zephyr continued, his voice unreadable. It is possible that more than 57 will pass. It is also possible that fewer than 57 will make it through. The air turned thick with confusion. Many contestants exchanged puzzled looks. What does that mean? Izuku thought, he felt his heartbeat quicken. He wasn't the only one struggling to make sense of Zephyr's words. But before he could even voice his confusion, Zephyr spoke again. Let me explain what the final test will be. The entire room held its breath. This was it. The final hurdle. The last trial that would determine their fate. A heavy silence followed Zephyr's words. The final test of your entrance exam will be about fighting, and surpassing yourself. Murmurs and confused whispers spread through the crowd like wildfire. Surpassing myself. Izuku frowned. ɪᴢᴜᴜ and Renji exchanged puzzled looks. What does that even mean? ɪᴢᴜᴜ muttered. Renji crossed his arms. Fighting I understand, but what does he mean by surpassing? Izuku wasn't the only one struggling to make sense of it. The room was buzzing with confusion, until a quiet voice behind him caught his attention. Interesting, that's going to be really interesting. Izuku turned sharply. It was Tetsuya. His expression was unreadable, his arms lazily crossed as he stared at Zephyr with an almost intrigued look. Izuku narrowed his eyes and bluntly asked, "Do you know what this test is going to be?" "You sound like you do." Tetsuya frowned and shrugged. "How would I know?" Then he smirked slightly. "I just said, interesting, because surpassing myself sounds fun." Izuku stared at him for a few seconds, trying to gauge whether he was lying. Something about the way he said it didn't sit right with him. He definitely knows something. But before Izuku could press further, Zephyr's voice rang out again, bringing their attention back to the front. The invigilator scanned the room, his piercing eyes taking in the expressions of the contestants. Some still looked confused, others nervous, and a few, like Tetsuya, seemed intrigued. Then Zephyr spoke again. "I can see the confusion on your faces. Let me explain." Everyone fell silent. "By surpassing yourself, I mean you will be fighting, a perfect duplicate of yourself." Gasps. Wide eyes. A shockwave of realization hit the room all at once. Your doppelganger will have the exact same abilities, strength, and combat style as you displayed in the third test. Izuku's breath caught in his throat. To pass this test, you must defeat yourself, and surpass the limits of who you are now. The silence was deafening. Some students visibly paled. Others clenched their fists as they processed the weight of this challenge. Fighting an opponent was one thing. Fighting themselves. ɪᴢᴜ whispered, "That's crazy." Renji let out a low whistle. No room for excuses, huh? Izuku's heart pounded. A version of me, with my exact strength, my exact combat skills, my wild storm. It wasn't just about winning a fight. It was about breaking their own limits. Then, Ʒephir continued. You might think this is impossible. But that is exactly why this test exists. His voice was cold and firm. A hero must always strive to be stronger than they were yesterday. The world doesn't wait for you to grow, it forces you to. Some contestants gulped, feeling the weight of his words. Others, like Tetsuya, looked even more intrigued. Then Ʒephir motioned towards the large metal door behind him. Behind these doors is the test chamber. The contestants turned their heads, focusing on the doors for the first time. They were massive, cold, and reinforced, almost like they led to an entirely different dimension. All of you will enter this room together. Another wave of murmurs spread. Izuku frowned. Together. But Ʒephir wasn't finished. However, once you step inside, each of you will be transported into your own battlefield. The confusion deepened. Ʒephir continued, his tone calm but unwavering. Think of it as a parallel space. While you will all enter the same room at the same time, inside, you will each be in your own separate battlefields. The realization settled in. You will not see any contestants or your friends. You will not hear them. It will be just you, and yourself. A tense silence followed. Some contestants looked terrified. Some gritted their teeth. And some, like Tetsuya, grinned. Izuku's stomach churned. This is beyond just a test. This is a battle against who I am right now. To pass. I have to become stronger than myself. Ʒephir's gaze hardened as he gave his final words. This is the ultimate challenge. If you wish to become heroes, then step forward. The doors slowly began to open, and the final test had begun. 18:2. As soon as Izuku stepped inside, a blinding light swallowed him whole. The intensity was overwhelming. He squeezed his eyes shut, his body feeling weightless, adrift in an empty void. Then, suddenly, the light vanished. Izuku's eyes blinked open. He stood in the middle of a vast, open field. Rolling green stretched endlessly in all directions beneath a clear blue sky. A soft breeze rustled the tall grass around him, filling the air with a calming whisper. But something felt off. Izuku turned slowly, scanning his surroundings. Where is it? Professor Ʒephir had said we would be fighting our duplicates, so where was it? There was no movement. No presence. Only silence. Izuku frowned, his guard up. Then, a sudden gust of wind. Something flashed behind him, fast. Too fast. Izuku spun instantly, fists raised, nothing. The field was empty. A second passed. Then, whoosh. Another blur, this time slicing right past him. Pain erupted across his back as something sharp cut through his skin. Blood trickled down his spine. Izuku gritted his teeth, instantly using Tempest Veil. A storm-like aura of wind flared to life around his body, crackling with raw energy, healing his back slowly. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. It's too fast, his muscles tensed. Again, whoosh. 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 A shadow zipped past him, circling like a wind. Izuku spun, eyes darting frantically, trying to track it. But no matter how fast he turned, he was always a step behind. A deep frustration boiled inside him. His hands clenched into fists. Then, whoosh. Another blur, this time, Izuku struck first. Lightning surged through his arm as he swung with everything he had, but his fist hit nothing. His attack sliced through empty air. Before he could react, crack. A powerful kick slammed into his ribs, sending him skidding backward across the grass. Izuku gasped, clutching his side. His eyes darted up, still nothing. The presence was there, but he couldn't see it. He couldn't touch it. His teeth clenched. Stop hiding and face me. His voice echoed across the vast field. Then, as if answering his challenge, the sky shifted. A violent storm began to form just meters ahead. Wind roared. Lightning crackled. The air itself buzzed with tension. Izuku braced himself, muscles coiled. Then, the storm split apart, and from its center, a shadow stepped forward. A hooded figure. Its movements slow. Deliberate. Izuku's breath hitched. The figure reached up, gripping its hood, then pulled it down. Izuku's stomach twisted. It was him. A perfect mirror. Same face. Same emerald green eyes. Same body. But different. The doppelganger's eyes glowed with an eerie light, empty yet predatory. Its tempest veil flared to life, identical to Izuku's own, except sharper, stronger. It tilted its head slightly, as if studying him. Then, without warning, it attacked. Whoosh! The doppelganger vanished. Izuku barely had time to react before a fist, charged with storm energy, came crashing toward his ribs. Boom! Pain exploded through his body as he was launched backward, tumbling across the field. He choked, gasping for air. Then, whoosh! Before he could even stand, a brutal kick slammed into his stomach. The force sent him reeling. His vision blurred. He barely got his arms up in time before, crack. A savage punch struck his jaw. Another crashed into his side. Left. Right. Left. A rapid barrage. No wasted movement. No hesitation. Izuku staggered, every muscle screaming. His clone, it wasn't just attacking. It was destroying him. Izuku swung a fist, desperate to land a hit, but the clone sidestepped effortlessly. Before he could recover, smash. A knee crashed into his gut, knocking the air from his lungs. Izuku dropped to one knee, coughing violently. His head spun. His body throbbed. His doppelganger stood over him, completely untouched. Izuku gritted his teeth. This thing knows all my moves. Then how is? His eyes widened in realization. It fights better than me. Whoosh! The clone lunged again, lightning coiling around its fist. Izuku barely raised his arms. Boom! The impact shattered the ground beneath them. Izuku was sent spiraling through the air, crashing down hard. His body refused to move. His vision blurred. Blood dripped down his face. His clone, it wasn't tiring. It wasn't weakening. It was countering. Overpowering. Dominating. Izuku breathed, his energy draining fast. I can't win like this. His chest heaved. Then, a heavy boot pressed against the side of his head. Izuku froze. The voice that spoke was his own. But colder. Crueler. Pathetic. Izuku's fists trembled. The doppelganger leaned down slightly. You really thought you could surpass me? His fingers dug into the dirt. Remember how your precious quirk was stolen? By the very man you idolized. Izuku's breath caught. All those memories started flooding in his head. The betrayal, the humiliation, the pain. Remember how you were framed at ɪᴢᴜ. Branded a traitor. Thrown away like trash. His clone's smirk deepened. You were weak then, the boot pressed down harder. And you are weak now. Izuku's heart pounded. A flicker of something deep inside him, a spark. His storm pulsed. Boom. A violent explosion of wind and lightning erupted from his body. The sky darkened. The air crackled with raw energy. The clone's eyes widened, then it was blasted backward. Izuku's tempest veil shattered, only to be replaced by something far stronger. He exhaled, steam rising from his skin. His breathing was heavy, but his entire being felt different. Electricity danced across his fingertips. The storm is running wild. The doppelganger staggered to its feet. For the first time, it looked uncertain. Izuku's eyes burned with new determination. "You're wrong." Lightning coiled around his arm. Before the clone could react, Izuku vanished. Whoosh! A bolt of electricity shot across the field. Then, boom! Izuku's fist, crackling with raw lightning, slammed into his duplicate. The impact shattered the earth. The moment Izuku's fist collided with his doppelganger's body, boom! A deafening explosion of lightning and wind tore through the battlefield, sending shockwaves rippling across the open field. The grass was scorched. The earth beneath them cracked. But before Izuku could press his attack, whoosh! The doppelganger twisted in midair, flipping effortlessly to land on its feet. Not a moment later, it vanished. Izuku's senses screamed. Behind. Crack. A lightning-fast strike slammed into Izuku's ribs. Before the pain even registered, another hit crashed into his shoulder. A sharp knee drove into his gut. Bang! Izuku shot backward like a bullet, slamming into the ground and skidding across the ruined field. His breathing was heavy. His muscles ached. But he wasn't the same as before. Lightning crackled at his fingertips. His tempest veil hummed around him, raw energy surging through his veins. His doppelganger landed softly a few feet away, emerald eyes glowing eerily. For the first time, they were fighting toe to toe. Izuku's grip tightened. He vanished. Whoosh! Lightning streaked across the battlefield as both fighters launched at each other at unimaginable speeds. Their fists clashed in a violent burst of energy, boom! Shockwaves split the earth beneath them. The force of their strikes shattered the air, sending ripples of wind and electricity in every direction. Their movements became a blur. Left hook. Dodge. Counter with a knee. Block. Lightning kick. Twist. Elbow to the jaw. Parry. They moved faster than thought, their bodies reacting purely on instinct. Each attack sent a storm of sparks and thunder crashing around them. But then, Izuku noticed it. His doppelganger's tempest veil, it was stronger. Each time Izuku landed a solid hit, the injuries barely lasted a second. Cuts closed instantly. Burns disappeared as if they never existed. The clone's storm energy was repairing its body in an instant. Meanwhile, Izuku's own tempest veil was lagging. A deep slash on his forearm took a few seconds to heal. The bruises on his ribs remained. He was accumulating injuries faster than his body could recover. He clenched his teeth. The doppelganger smirked. Whoosh! It vanished again. Izuku barely twisted in time to block a devastating punch to the face, bang. Even through his guard, the impact rattled his bones. The force sent him flying back. He flipped midair, catching himself just before hitting the ground. But his body was aching. He was getting slower. His clone wasn't. For every wound Izuku inflicted, it healed instantly. But for every wound his clone inflicted, Izuku was bleeding. I can't keep up. Another strike. Another wound. Another second too slow. Izuku gritted his teeth. No. I refuse to lose. Then, something deep inside him shifted. Like a storm howling in his soul. A whisper in the wind. A voice that he recognizes too well. Let go. His breath hitched. You're thinking too much. His emerald eyes widened. The storm didn't need calculations. The storm didn't need hesitation. It simply was. It raged. It roared. It moved. Izuku exhaled. And then, he let go. His mind emptied. His thoughts faded. His body moved. His storm guided him. Whoosh! In a flash of lightning, Izuku lunged, not with a plan. Not with a strategy. But with pure instinct. His movements became erratic. Unpredictable. The doppelganger's eyes widened slightly. For the first time, it couldn't read him. Crack. Izuku's knee slammed into its ribs. The clone twisted to counter, but Izuku was already gone. Boom. A lightning-infused kick struck its jaw from the side. The doppelganger staggered, but Izuku didn't stop. He struck again. And again. And again. Moving faster than thought, faster than reaction. For the first time, the doppelganger couldn't keep up. Lightning wrapped around Izuku's body like a living storm. His eyes yelled with untamed energy. He no longer fought like a human. He fought like a force of nature. The clone tried to retaliate, but Izuku was already behind it. Whoosh! A vicious elbow struck the clone's spine. It stumbled forward, boom. A brutal kick sent it crashing into the ground, skidding across the ruined battlefield. The doppelganger coughed, pushing itself up. For the first time, its eerie, confident expression shook. It didn't understand. Izuku was no longer predictable. No longer following patterns. He had surrendered himself to the wild storm, and now, he was uncontrollable. Lightning crackled in the sky above. The air grew dense. Izuku stood tall, electricity roaring around him. His fists clenched. His gaze locked onto his clone. The storm raged. Lightning tore through the battlefield, splitting the ground beneath them. Wind howled like a beast, sending debris flying in every direction. But Izuku didn't care. He had surrendered to the storm. His movements weren't planned. They weren't calculated. They were instinct. The doppelganger moved, but Izuku was already there. Boom. A lightning-infused fist crashed into its face, sending it flying back. The clone twisted midair, trying to recover, whoosh. Izuku vanished. Reappearing right above it. Crack. A brutal axe kick sent the doppelganger plummeting back to the ground, slamming into the earth with a deafening explosion. Smoke and dust rose into the air. Lightning flickered within the storm clouds above. But Izuku didn't stop. He descended like a bolt of lightning, landing HRD on the ground beside his fallen opponent. The doppelganger groaned, struggling to push itself up, but Izuku was already above it. He stomped down, planting his foot firmly on its head, pinning it to the shattered ground. His glowing emerald eyes burned with unyielding determination. His body was covered in cuts and bruises, his tempest veil barely keeping up with his injuries. But he was standing. And his doppelganger was beneath him. He had won. Izuku leaned forward, his voice like thunder. I'm not weak. The storm crackled around him. And I'll prove that to everyone. His foot pressed down harder, making the clone's head grind against the broken earth. I'll prove I did nothing wrong at you, eh? His eyes blazed with raw, unshaken resolve. I'll make them all regret kicking me out. For a moment, there was silence. Then, the doppelganger smirked. Izuku's breath hitched. Something about that smirk, so cold, so knowing, made his stomach twist. The clone's voice was quiet, but its words cut deeper than any wound. You think proving yourself will change anything? Izuku stiffened. The doppelganger chuckled darkly. Your mother didn't even hesitate to throw you away. Izuku's blood ran cold. She doesn't even see you as her son. His heart pounded against his ribs. No matter how much you prove yourself, no matter how strong you become, the clone's smirk widened, its voice dripping with venom. You will never make her believe in you. Izuku's breath caught in his throat. His grip on his storm wavered. For a second, just a second, doubt crept into his mind. And in that moment, the doppelganger's body began to fade. Its smirk was the last thing Izuku saw before, flash. A blinding white light engulfed him. He shut his eyes. The storm disappeared. The battlefield was gone. And when he opened his eyes again, he was standing in front of the invigilator. His body swayed slightly. His vision blurred. He barely registered that Tetsuya was already there, standing silently in the corner, watching him. Then, everything went black. 19. A soft, warm light filled Izuku's vision as his consciousness slowly returned. His eyelids fluttered open, his pupils dilating as he struggled to adjust to the brightness. His body felt heavy, sore, as if he had been hit by a freight train. His head pounded with a dull, persistent ache, making even the simple act of keeping his eyes open a challenge. With great effort, he tried to sit up, only for a sharp throb of pain to shoot through his skull. Ugh! Low groan escaped him as he slumped back onto the bed, the cool sheets brushing against his skin. His breathing was slow and uneven. Where am I? He turned his head slightly, glancing around the room. The familiar scent of antiseptic lingered in the air, the steady beeping of heart monitors echoing softly. He was in the infirmary. The realization settled in his mind, but before he could process it further, a voice came from beside him. Finally awake, huh? Izuku blinked and turned his head to the right. Sitting on the next bed over was Rinji, arms crossed, a knowing smirk tugging at his lips. His posture was relaxed, though his arm was bandaged, and a few faint bruises marked his face. Izuku let out a breath before smirking back. You too, huh? Rinji chuckled, shrugging. Yeah, but not as bad as you. I woke up way before you did. Izuku scoffed, shaking his head slightly, though it made his headache worse. Show off. Rinji grinned. Hey, I call it efficiency. Izuku huffed, but the exchange made him feel a little lighter. Despite how brutal the fight had been, hearing Rinji's usual confident tone reassured him. As his mind cleared a bit more, Izuku finally noticed the rest of the infirmary. Rows of beds were filled with students. Some were resting, others were awake but visibly exhausted. Some had bandages wrapped around their arms, legs, or heads. The air was filled with quiet murmurs and occasional groans of discomfort. So, the others went through the same thing, huh? This fourth trial had pushed all of them to their limits. As Izuku was lost in thought, the door to the infirmary suddenly burst open. Izuku. Renji. A familiar voice rang through the room. Before either of them could react, ɪᴢᴜ came rushing towards them, Tetsuya following closely behind. The moment she reached them, ɪᴢᴜ didn't hesitate, she threw her arms around both of them. I was so worried, she said, her voice slightly muffled as she hugged them tightly. Izuku and Renji both stiffened for a second before relaxing, a small chuckle escaping Renji. Hey, take it easy, ɪᴢᴜ, Renji muttered, but there was no real protest in his voice. Izuku, despite the soreness, let out a small laugh. Yeah, we're fine, really. ɪᴢᴜ pulled back slightly, looking at them with furrowed brows. Fine. You two were unconscious for hours. Tetsuya sighed, shaking his head. She was pacing outside the infirmary the whole time, practically threatening the staff to let her in. ɪᴢᴜ huffed, crossing her arms. Well, excuse me for being worried about my friends. Izuku couldn't help but smile at that. Even after everything, it was good to be back with them. ɪᴢᴜ finally pulled away, though she kept a close eye on both Izuku and Renji, as if making sure they wouldn't suddenly collapse again. Tetsuya, who had been watching the reunion with a smug look, clicked his tongue before speaking. Man, you two really went all out, huh? He said, crossing his arms. Izuku raised a brow. What do you mean? Tetsuya smirked. I mean, out of everyone here, you two are the ones who got knocked out cold. Renji scoffed, rolling his eyes. TCH. We weren't knocked out cold. We just needed a little extra recovery time. Tetsuya snorted. Yeah, keep telling yourself that. But facts are facts, he gestured dramatically around the infirmary. Most of the others are awake, walking around, maybe a little banged up, but you two. You guys were down for hours. Izuku sighed. It was a tough fight, okay. Tetsuya nodded, feigning deep thought. I'm sure it was. But you know. I don't remember passing out like some people here. Izuku and Renji both glared at him. I'm just saying, Tetsuya continued, shrugging, maybe next time, try not to get your butts kicked so hard. Renji let out an exasperated sigh, rubbing his temples. Tetsuya, you do realize we were literally fighting ourselves, right? Like an exact copy, move for move. Tetsuya smirked. Yeah. And yet, here I am, standing, while you two were taking a nice, long nap. Izuku narrowed his eyes. You're enjoying this way too much. Tetsuya placed a hand on his chest, looking offended. Me. Enjoying this. No, I would never take pleasure in my dear teammates getting their butts handed to them. Renji groaned. You're so DMN annoying. Ķīd, still standing beside them, let out a sigh. Tetsuya, stop teasing them. They went through a lot. Tetsuya smirked, but backed off slightly. Alright. I'll give them some slack, he said. Then he leaned in slightly toward Izuku and grinned. But seriously, Midoriya, how does it feel getting beat up by yourself? Does it hurt your pride? Izuku deadpanned. Tetsuya, I swear, Ķīd cut in. Alright, enough teasing, she said, before turning back to Izuku and Renji with a small, relieved smile. I'm just glad you guys are okay. Tetsuya crossed his arms, smirking. Yeah. I guess it would have been boring without you two around anyway. Izuku sighed, shaking his head. This guy. Even after everything, Tetsuya was still Tetsuya. As the teasing from Tetsuya finally settled down, the conversation shifted. Ķīd leaned back in her chair, stretching her arms before smirking proudly. You know, she started, glancing between Izuku and Renji, unlike you two, I didn't pass out. I actually managed to outsmart my doppelganger. Renji raised an eyebrow. Oh. Is that so? Izuku tilted his head. How did you do it? Ķīd grinned, clearly enjoying the attention. Well, it wasn't easy, obviously. She crossed her arms. At first, my doppelganger was completely copying my every move, which was frustrating. But then I realized, if she was mimicking my combat style exactly, that meant she had the same weaknesses as me. Izuku nodded, intrigued. So, you exploited them. Ķīd smirked. Exactly. I started using fake-outs, changed my stance slightly, and used more feints than actual attacks. My doppelganger was so focused on mirroring me that she couldn't adapt as fast when I switched things up. That gave me the edge to take her down. Renji hummed in thought. That's actually pretty smart. Izuku smiled. Yeah, that's impressive, Ķīd. Before Ķīd could bask in the well-deserved praise, Tetsuya let out a dramatic sigh. Yeah, very clever, he said, waving his hand dismissively. But let's be real, Ķīd, your doppelganger probably just gave up because she realized how annoying it'd be to fight you for too long. Ķīd froze mid-smile. Renji and Izuku immediately stiffened. Ķīd slowly turned to glare at Tetsuya, her hands clenching into fists. What did you say? Tetsuya grinned mischievously. Oh, nothing, just that, maybe, she figured dealing with you wasn't worth the headache and just, he made a mock surrendering motion. Gave up. Ķīd shouted, launching herself at him. Renji and Izuku quickly grabbed her arms, holding her back. Let me go. I swear I'll wipe that smug look off his face. Ķīd growled, struggling against their grip. Tetsuya leaned back slightly, smirking. Whoa, whoa, so violent. And here I thought you were the smart one. ɪᴢᴜᴜ snapped. You little. Izuku sighed. Tetsuya, stop provoking her. Renji grunted, still holding on to ɪᴢᴜᴜ. Yeah, you're not helping yourself here. Tetsuya shrugged, completely unfazed. Hey, if she can't take a joke, maybe her doppelganger really was the smarter one. I will kill you. ɪᴢᴜ shrieked. Izuku and Renji struggled to hold her back, exchanging tired looks. This is never going to end, is it? Renji muttered. Izuku sighed again. Nope. As soon as Tetsuya smirked again, ɪᴢᴜ broke free from Izuku and Renji's grip. Get back here, you little, she shouted, lunging at him. Tetsuya's eyes widened for a split second before his instincts kicked in. Oh, hell no. He turned on his heels and bolted for the infirmary door, laughing as he ran. ɪᴢᴜ was right behind him, her eyes burning with fury. I swear, Tetsuya, if I catch you. If. Tetsuya called over his shoulder, grinning. So you admit you can't catch me. That only fueled ɪᴢᴜ's rage. I'll show you. With surprising speed for someone who had just fought a doppelganger, she chased after him, shoving past beds and chairs. Tetsuya, despite his usual carefree attitude, seemed to realize the danger he was in and picked up his pace. The other injured students in the infirmary turned to watch the chaos unfold. One of them, still lying in bed, blinked. Are they playing tag? Another groaned. Just ignore them. We're already in enough pain. Meanwhile, Izuku and Renji just stood there, watching the scene unfold. Renji crossed his arms. Should we stop them? Izuku sighed, rubbing his temple. Do we ever succeed when we try? Renji hummed in thought. Good point. At that moment, Tetsuya kicked open the infirmary door and sprinted into the hallway. ɪᴢᴜ was right behind him. I'll make you regret being born, she yelled as she chased him out into the halls. Izuku and Renji exchanged yet another tired look. 5 minutes, Renji said, stretching. I bet 5 minutes before she catches him. Izuku smirked slightly. I give it 3. And with that, they simply sat back and waited for the inevitable. 20. The infirmary was finally settling down after the chaos ɪᴢᴜ and Tetsuya caused when suddenly, bzzzt. A faint static noise echoed through the air as the announcement speakers crackled to life. The sound reached every corner of the building, from the infirmary to the hallways and even the training areas. Every student stopped what they were doing and turned their heads toward the nearest speaker. Then, a familiar, commanding voice came through, one that sent a wave of seriousness over the academy. All students, report to the front grounds in 10 minutes. The results of the 4th round will now be announced. The moment Professor Zephyr's voice faded, the entire building buzzed with movement. In the infirmary, Izuku and Renji froze. Izuku's eyes widened, his heart pounding in anticipation. He slowly turned his head toward Renji, who was already looking back at him. A moment of silence. Then, a grin stretched across both of their faces. Without another word, they threw off their blankets and jumped to their feet. Let's go. Renji said, already. Moving toward the door. Izuku nodded sharply, his adrenaline kicking in, pushing past the pain in his body. As soon as they stepped outside the infirmary, they were met with a flood of students rushing toward the front grounds. This is it. The moment we find out if we made it. Meanwhile, ɪᴢᴜ and Tetsuya, still in the hallway from their earlier chase, also heard the announcement. ɪᴢᴜ stopped mid-step, her breathing still heavy from the chase. Tetsuya, leaning against a pillar, tilted his head slightly. Well. Guess it's time to see if we passed or if we wasted all that energy for nothing. ɪᴢᴜ shot him a glare. You may have been playing around, but I fought seriously. Tetsuya only chuckled. Sure. Keep telling yourself that. But before ɪᴢᴜ could lunge at him again, students started dashing past them, heading toward the front grounds. ɪᴢᴜ clicked her tongue. "Tch, whatever, let's go." She turned and ran ahead, not waiting for Tetsuya. Tetsuya sighed dramatically but followed after her. "Man, why is everyone so eager? We're either in or out. Simple as that." But even as he said it, his pace quickened. At the front ground, Izuku and Renji finally pushed through the growing crowd of students, scanning the area. "Where's ɪᴢᴜ?" Izuku asked, eyes searching. Renji looked around as well. "She should be here somewhere." Then, Izuku spotted her. "Over there." He pointed toward ɪᴢᴜ, who was standing a few meters away, arms crossed, tapping her foot impatiently. The two didn't waste a second before dashing toward her. ɪᴢᴜ noticed them approaching and smirked. "Took you long enough." Izuku grinned. "We had to push through the crowd." Renji rolled his eyes. "Let's just focus. The results are coming any minute now." And with that, they turned toward the center of the front grounds, where Professor Zephyr was standing, his cold gaze sweeping over the crowd. The moment of truth had arrived. The tension in the air was suffocating. All the students stood gathered in the vast training ground, their eyes locked on Professor Zephyr, who stood at the podium with his usual cold and unyielding expression. There was no introduction, no unnecessary words. He was not the type to waste time. "I will now announce the names of the students who have successfully passed the 4th round and will be attending Nova Imperial Academy." A wave of silence washed over the crowd. The announcement had begun. Zephyr's sharp voice cut through the air, naming students in an unpredictable order. 31st place, a murmur spread through the students as the name was called, but no one had time to react further before. 26th place, a few gasps. Hannah covered her mouth, eyes shining with disbelief and joy. 47th place, a student in the middle of the crowd let out a victorious yell. The names continued, jumping around without any clear pattern. Some students exhaled in relief as their names were called, while others clenched their fists, anxiously waiting. 15 minutes passed. Zephyr paused for a moment after announcing the 50th student. Then, he spoke again, his tone unwavering. "Now, I will announce your classes." The crowd held their breath. First, Jin Kisaragi. Excited murmurs erupted. A tall student with white hair and piercing blue eyes stood proudly, his presence alone exuding depth. Second, Hiroshi Takeda. A young man with wild dark red hair nodded, a small smirk forming. Zephyr continued, listing off names one by one. 10th, Lina Hoshigaki. With that, Class A was complete. He immediately moved on. Students ranked 11th to 20th will be in Class B again, names were listed. Then Class C, Class D, Class E. One after another. And yet, Izuku, Renji, ɪᴢᴜ, and Tetsuya's names were never called. A chilling silence followed the final announcement. The four of them stood there, frozen. Some students had already erupted into cheers, others into tears. But they stood still. Renji was the first to speak, his voice trembling. I heard correctly, right?" His fists clenched. Professor Zephyr didn't say our names, his breathing grew uneven. "How is that possible?" His voice cracked. ɪᴢᴜ stood stiffly beside him, her body unmoving. Her mind was blank. Izuku's hands shook. Tetsuya, always playful, always teasing, stood there with wide eyes, his usual smirk nowhere to be seen. Even he couldn't joke about this. Izuku whispered, "How is this possible? I was second, then why?" ɪᴢᴜ snapped back to reality. Her entire body trembled. The weight of reality crashed down on her all at once. A sharp, choked sob tore from her throat. Tears spilled down her face uncontrollably. I failed," she whispered. Renji and Izuku moved at the same time. Without hesitation, they pulled her into a hug. Her hands clutched their shirts as her shoulders shook violently. The atmosphere was heavy, the air thick with disappointment for those who had not made the cut. Students who had given their all, sweat, blood, and tears, stood in solemn silence, their heads down, trying to process the harsh reality of the moment. Meanwhile, the students who had succeeded in earning a spot at Nova Imperia Academy were celebrating, voices of joy and pride filling the air. Some jumped in excitement, others hugged their friends. But the mood shifted abruptly when Professor Zephyr cleared his throat. The loud sound cut through the noise like a blade. Instantly, the celebration stopped. Every student, even those who had just been celebrating, became still and quiet. Professor Zephyr stepped forward, his voice ringing out. Now, for the special announcement. The entire crowd held its breath. There are 7 extra students who have been selected. They will be placed in the special course. A murmur went through the crowd. Those who had already been selected turned toward each other, confused but intrigued. Zephyr continued, these 7 students have performed exceptionally well across all the rounds of the exam. They will be part of a special training course, where they will be pushed to the limits of their abilities. And now, I will announce the names of these students. The crowd was silent again, waiting for the announcement to unfold. 7th place holder, Mark, congratulations. 6th place holder, Lucia, congratulations. 5th place holder, Rissy, congratulations. 4th place holder, Rinji, congratulations. The tension in the air thickened as Rinji's name was called. His eyes widened as he stood, a small, surprised smile on his face. 3rd place holder, ɪᴢᴜᴜ, congratulations. ɪᴢᴜ's jaw dropped. She had been sure she had failed. But the sound of her name lifted her spirits instantly, and she beamed, relief flooding through her. 2nd place holder, Izuku, congratulations. Izuku's heart skipped a beat. He had been certain he had done poorly in some areas, but hearing his name called brought a wave of pride and disbelief over him. And finally, 1st place holder, Tetsuya, congratulations. Tetsuya stood motionless, his expression unreadable for a moment before he broke into his usual grin. I knew I had it in me. The rest of the crowd looked at the 7 students, some with awe and some with jealousy. These were the elite, the ones who had earned the right to be in the special course. Though, there's a twist. Zephyr's voice rang out again. Any student from a different class may challenge one of these 7 for their position. If you manage to defeat them, you will take their place. It's a fun game, wouldn't you agree? He said, a slight grin pulling at the corners of his mouth. The idea of challenges, of fighting for their place in the hierarchy, made some students buzz with excitement. Others, though, looked worried, knowing how tough these 7 had proven to be. The 7 stood frozen for a moment, processing the gravity of what they had just heard. A special course was one thing, but now there was the potential for new challenges, new opponents who wanted to take their places. And then, with a sudden burst of energy, ɪᴢᴜ jumped into the air with a loud, victorious cheer. Yah! I knew it. I can't fail. She shouted, her face lighting up with sheer joy. Without missing a beat, she launched herself at Izuku, Rinji, and even Tetsuya, throwing her arms around all 3 of them in an enthusiastic hug. But then she froze, her arms still wrapped around Tetsuya. Realizing what she was doing, she quickly pulled away with an awkward laugh. I mean, you 2 are the most important, right? She said, flashing a nervous smile at Tetsuya. Rinji couldn't help but chuckle at ɪᴢᴜ's sudden shift. You sure about that? I'm pretty sure you're just trying to avoid hugging Tetsuya. Tetsuya, ever the tease, grinned widely. Oh, come on, ɪᴢᴜ. Don't tell me you're scared to hug me. ɪᴢᴜ, now fully flustered, shot a playful glare at Tetsuya. Shut up, Tetsuya, she retorted, her face flushed. Izuku shook his head, laughing softly at the scene before him. You two are impossible. Renji, still a little stunned by everything, slapped Izuku on the back with a grin. Well, I guess we'll have to prove ourselves in the special course. But at least we're all together in this. ɪᴢᴜᴜ, despite her embarrassment, beamed at her friends. Right. We're going to crush it. Tetsuya, on the other hand, kept his usual smirk in place. Good luck to everyone else trying to take our spots. It's not going to be easy. The group shared a quiet moment of camaraderie before the sound of Zephyr's voice broke their focus once more. Alright, now that the announcement is over, you are all free to return to your home, took as much rest as you can. After 2 days your classes will start and prepare for the next stage of your journey. The training will be intense. Do not take this lightly. As the group made their way out of the crowd, heading toward their own way, the weight of the announcement still lingered in the air. The special course would test them in ways they hadn't even imagined. But together, they knew they were ready.